Alright, YouTube, we're back, of course, talking some 28 years later. This is a movie I've been waiting a very long time for, a vast portion of my life. 18 years now since 28 weeks later came out. Always wanted another sequel, regardless of whether that was 28 months later, 28 years later, whatever the hell it was going to be. Another film in the franchise, it could have been a prequel. I didn't give a shit, I just wanted something else. The question then becomes, was it worth the wait? Since this film is something we've been kind of talking about on the channel off and on since 2018, 7 years ago, I did want to just kind of talk about it a bit, get my thoughts on it. Spoiler free, I will say. People will, argue about whether it is or isn't a spoiler, so, obviously, there's some precautions still. I'm not going to go, beat by beat and tell you what happened in the movie exactly or anything like that, but we're definitely going to talk about certain aspects of the film, and if you haven't seen it yet or don't know much about it, maybe you don't want to watch this particular video, but we're not going to spoil the whole movie, though, for sure. Now, first and foremost, was it worth the 18-year wait, the almost 2-decade-long wait for the next 28 days movie? I would say yes. As somebody who considers himself a pretty big fan of 28 Days Later, I've said on the channel for years and years now that it is my favorite film, and I still stand by that, and it'll probably never change. I can't imagine I'll ever watch a film that I think is better than 28 Days Later. I think 28 Years Later delivered. I'd say probably 95% or more of this film. There's a few things that I question here and there, and there's one particular thing that surprised the fuck out of me. If you've watched the movie, you probably know what I'm referencing. We'll definitely talk about that to some degree within this video at some point. Visually, of course, the movie is beautiful. The cinematography from Danny Boyle, the world, that post-apocalyptic feel of the film, I believe that this is a world these people have lived in for 28 years, trying to hide from the infected. They're not totally hiding from the infected, because they do leave the island at times and go and kill the infected and hunt and things like that, right? Which is kind of the premise of the film to a certain degree, at least at the beginning. It's, Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, Jamie, taking his son, who's called Spike for some reason, out onto the mainland to actually kill his first infected. I did say the mainland because they do live on an island village on Holy Island that's protected by a causeway that gets covered by the tide. And I do like the prospect of that. The idea is pretty interesting. I would personally just pick an actual fucking island that has no land connecting it, so there's no chance of the infected coming to get you. But I still do kind of like the setting. And actually, speaking of the premise of the film, that's something we didn't really know going into it, right? At least based on the trailers. Maybe they could have talked about it a bit in interviews. I didn't really keep up with all the shit for the movie. But, we didn't really know what the story of the movie was going to be. Obviously, we're dealing with, a post-apocalyptic world 30 years into this infection or whatever, but, we didn't really know what was going to be happening in the film for the most part, the actual story of the film, which was kind of nice, actually. I'm obviously not here to give away what the story is. We're trying to remain spoiler-free here, but I will say the story was damn good. It was probably the most heartfelt story out of the 3 movies so far, right? The most emotional story, for sure. A lot of that is because of the kid actor in the film, Alfie Williams, who plays Spike, who pretty much carries this movie. Aaron Taylor Johnson, you would be led to believe by the marketing and shit, would be the lead of the film. And he is up to a certain point, but realistically, the kid actor is who actually leads the film. And he does a damn good job. By far the best kid actor in the 3 movies that we have thus far, right? The actress who played Hannah in the first film was pretty bad. Andy and Tammy in the second film weren't terrible, I guess. Andy was maybe kind of bad, but Imogen Poots is a pretty good actor, so her character wasn't terrible, I guess. This kid Alfie Williams brings a lot of heart to the film and pretty much carries it, at least for the story aspect. But also the other main characters and actors in the film are great. Jodie Comer, who plays Isla, which is Spike's mom, Jamie, Aaron Taylor Johnson's wife or whatever, and then Ray Fiennes' character, Dr. Ian Kelson, was a bit of a surprise. I don't want to go into what his character's about, just because that might be a bit of a spoiler, but based on the trailers, I thought they were going a different direction with the character, and it was definitely a surprise. Fiennes is a damn good actor, so pretty much the entire time he's on screen, I was captivated. Moving on from the cinematography and the acting, of course the music's great. That's something that I really love with the first film. The soundtrack, 28 Days Later, is so fucking good. Maybe my favorite, not only is it my favorite movie, maybe my favorite soundtrack too, when it comes to any other film out there. This one's pretty up there too. There's definitely a good soundtrack. I don't know that it necessarily competes with the first film for me. And they didn't really, I don't know how much they dipped into the first movie soundtrack, other than they did play East Hastings by Godspeed You Black Emperor at one point in the film. It's a rendition of that track. Maybe it's not exactly the same as the one that's in the first film, but it's such a beautifully haunting song. And I'm glad they picked that. It's either that or In the House in a Heartbeat, which I don't think was in this movie. I could be wrong on that. But if you're going to pick one track from the first movie, it's one of those two. Kind of hopping back to the beginning of the film, Jamie and Spike leaving the island to go kill an infected. It's something they do on the island once they turn a certain age. Now, Spike's a little bit young. He's 12 years old, and I think that they said in the movie that they do it when they're 14 or 15. So he's a little bit young. But it's obviously where we get our first encounter with the infected in this film, other than the opening scene, which you've already seen in the first trailer. How were the infected in this film? I would say they're pretty terrifying. Probably the scariest ones out of the 3 movies thus far. Other than like one variant of the infected, which was a little kind of weird and laughable. But overall, like the regular infected, they're just sprinting at you, terrifying as fuck. Yes, there are different kinds of infected in this movie, which was a little bit of a surprise, just because I don't think I got that vibe from the trailers. They maybe have talked about that again in like interviews and shit. I wasn't keeping up with all that stuff. I really watched like one or two trailers and I went in for the most part kind of blind, other than some stuff we talked about on the channel here and there. And it's not totally new for the series, just because you kind of had that a bit in the second film with, Dawn, Robert Carlyle's character, who was like kind of an intelligent infected. So it's kind of been there a little bit, but this is more so like the infection's been going on for a long time and they've kind of evolved in a way or whatever. It's kind of how I think it's presented. I don't totally hate the idea. I'm just a little bit confused just because based on like the first and second film, the infected eventually die off and like starve to death. So I don't really know how the infection's still around. Like I think they're kind of talking about that leading into the film. And as far as I can remember from the film itself, they don't really ever touch on that. I could be wrong. You guys can let me know if you've seen the film. Like, do they say why the infection's still around 28 years later? Because I'm a little confused. Like, how's somebody alive long enough to like evolve and shit, right? Like, that doesn't really make sense to me based on the first two movies. They do show the infected eating, I believe, like animals in this movie at certain points. So maybe that's how they're still alive. But like, why didn't the infected do that in the first film or the second film, right? Like, why did they starve to death if they've been capable of eating, deer or fish or something this entire time? I'm not sure if that's like a retcon sort of thing or something where like they eat animals now, but yeah, like they don't, I guess, starve to death this time around. But going back to Jamie and Spike at the beginning of the film, the first infected they come across is one of the variants. And I think it's called a Slolo. I believe it's what its name is. And I shit you not, it is just a fat infected that crawls on the ground slowly. They showed this off a little bit in the trailers. And they're definitely dangerous because they're quiet. They're kind of stealthy, right? If you don't know that they're crawling up behind you, they can definitely kill you. And once they're ready to like attack you, they're still fast, like and dangerous like the other infected. But just the visual of this like fat infected crawling around on the ground, like really, really slowly eating worms out of the ground, was not really scary. Like, it was kind of laughable. I didn't know what to think at first. I'm also not really sure how that particular variant gets made, because like how are they that fat, right? Because infected are full of rage and run around all the goddamn time. Like, how do you even get to that state as an infected? It's a little confusing. The other variant that you see in the trailers as well, which is the big muscular ones, are the alphas. And those are definitely fucking terrifying. They do actually give an explanation for these infected in the film because of the rage virus. It's kind of like being on steroids, I guess. So maybe because of being like infected with rage for a long period of time, maybe just pumping all that testosterone through your body, that's why you get into this like muscular state, I guess. Which is pretty cool that there's like an explanation for it. It kind of fits with the theme of what the infection is. They are also called alphas because there is like a pack mentality where they are like the leader of a group of infected and kind of direct them to do stuff. Not even just their size alone, they're also threatening just because they can tank shots more. Like, you can normally take down one infected with like an arrow, right? At least in this film. And they can, take multiple fucking arrows and still be coming at you. But speaking of like the pack mentality, the variant infecteds and things like that, there's also a pregnant infected at one point. Which I guess isn't totally a surprise if they're kind of like evolving over time and becoming animalistic in a way with like the herd stuff and packs and whatever. I guess they maybe still mate or something. But it gives birth to like a normal human baby. It's not an infected baby, which is a little weird. It doesn't really make sense why they'd be mating other than maybe like a primal urge just to have sex with each other, I guess. I don't know. But they're not like mating to like reproduce. And like what would happen? Like they'd give birth to a regular baby and just, I guess, maul it to death afterwards or something. Like I don't know what the purpose is. I don't know. The reason why I'm bringing this up though is because it feels like sort of ripping off like Zack Snyder a bit, because we've seen in both of his zombie films, Dawn of the Dead 2004 and Army of the Dead, we've seen zombie babies, right? And specifically in Army of the Dead, there is like a pack mentality sort of thing where there's like a leader and like a queen of sorts or something, and they have like a baby, right? This with one of the alphas in this film, it seems to imply that it was maybe the father of that baby or whatever, or at least impregnated that infected woman. I just don't really know how I feel about like the pregnant infected thing, because I've already seen that multiple times in other movies. It's probably technically done better in this film, but it's still a little bit confusing, I guess, maybe. Speaking of zombie baby, I've said that a few times now. They actually call it that in the film. There's a group of native soldiers who get stranded on the island. The team gets wiped out. You see that in the trailer. There's only one soldier that survives. Eventually meets up with our characters. But whenever the infected gives birth to the baby, like, he literally calls it zombie baby. It could be kind of like a meta thing in a way, because people do refer to them as zombie films, even though they're not actually the living dead or whatever, right? I've even called it that, right? Because they're in the zombie genre, even though it's a different kind of infection. Yeah, we actually get use of the word zombie in one of the 28 Days films, which was a little surprising. Speaking of the NATO soldiers, like, the world outside of Great Britain is going on as usual, which is something they kind of played with the first film and I guess kind of the second film, where like maybe they're quarantined, you know, it's the rest of the world's just fine, and that is the case with this third film. They did show this off with one of the trailers, I believe, this map right here, kind of letting you know that like the whole place is quarantined. That premise of like the world's like, fuck it, like it's too dangerous, it's not worth like risking the rest of the world, we're just leaving you guys to fend for yourselves. And obviously nobody's coming to rescue them anyways, it's been 28 years, right? But it's like the idea is pretty like interesting. Yeah, whenever like the NATO soldier kind of joins up with our group, he does have like a smartphone, like, so you know it's like modern times essentially, at least out in the rest of the world. Well, I've always loved that idea since the first film when they showed Jim laying down and seeing the plane fly over, like the rest of the world is still going on, and it's just you guys trapped here dealing with this shit. Like that prospect is terrifying. They fully commit to that with this film. And I did say towards the beginning of the video that there was one thing in particular that I was a little surprised by. We're not going to spoil it here, but I am going to talk about it a bit, and it's the ending. I mean the very ending. Because there is like kind of a nice ending to the film itself, and then there's like what happens at the very end of the film. And even if I wanted to spoil it for you, I don't think I could explain to you what actually fucking happens. At the very end of the film, there is a tonal shift that you were not prepared for. It's going to be very make or break for you on whether or not you like the film overall. Again, I said I like 95% of the film. Like the very end, I did not like. I was not prepared for it. And even having sat on it for like a day or so now to think about it before making this video, I still don't like it. I don't understand it. It's supposedly a reference to something. I don't give a shit about that. It just doesn't make it. It's just weird. It doesn't make any sense. Like it jumps into pretty much comedy territory. Now think about that for a 28 days film, right? There's definitely like some humor in the films. They can be entertaining in that way. There can be some comedy here and there. It's not a comedy film, but you know, characters can tell jokes and things. Funny things can happen. I'm talking actual fucking comedy, like some scary movie type shit happens at the end of this film. And I do not know why. It is not something I ever expected or wanted from a film in this series, and I don't know how I feel about going into the rest of the trilogy, the sequel. Like, if this is supposed to set some sort of tone or some shit. I've seen people try to, like, explain it and justify it and why it's there at the end of the film and all these other things, and it's like, dude, I don't give a shit. It makes no goddamn sense for the vibe and the tone of this film and the series in general, why a scene like this would be there at all. Again, it is legitimately make or break, I would think, for a lot of people out there, including myself. And it's pretty much break for me. I will have to wait and see what they do with the sequel and whether or not this scene matters or, again, is setting some sort of a tone for the next movie or movies. Because holy shit, dude, it is insane to say the least. If you have seen the film and you can discuss it without spoilers in the comments, I would love to know what your thoughts are, especially in the ending. I think overall the movie's great. I said that 95% or so. I think overall I did enjoy the movie. But it's a fucking curveball at the end, dude. And that's mostly why I want to make this video. I don't even know if I would have talked about the movie in a video, if not for the ending itself. Like, at least it's something, I guess, that has people talking. Maybe that's a positive, I guess, for the series. But goddamn. Probably do a similar kind of video in the future for the sequel, which is coming out early next year. I think January 2026. I believe they filmed them kind of together or something like that, kind of back to back or whatever. So we're getting that one very, very soon. So we'll definitely discuss that film in some capacity after it comes out. But I think that'll be the video, my dudes. I just wanted to kind of talk about this film, kind of get it off my chest a little bit, kind of rant a tiny bit about the ending, but also just discuss it in general, because we've been waiting for this for a very long time. I do think, again, great movie. It's far, far better than Weeks. It's still like days for me is number one, then years, then weeks. But it's more like, days, years, weeks. Weeks is down here. Like, I think it's a good movie. It's entertaining, but like it's not a great film, I wouldn't say. But yeah, I think years is way better than Weeks. That is indeed the video, my dude. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @davidYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.